Welcome to We Are Old, Get Over It, the podcast where we celebrate the wisdom of age and maybe a little grumbling too. Our guests dive into topics that matter most to us, from navigating the digital world to embracing new adventures and the challenges that hold us back. Join me for about 30 minutes of insightful conversations, honest reflections, and a whole lot of get over it attitude. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Ken. I'm your host for We Are Old, Get Over It. Today, I have an interesting conversation planned with a professor from Brandeis University. And it's a subject that you probably haven't thought about, but underneath it all, you probably deal with it every day. It's recognition of people that have baby faces and reacting to them. I know you probably have never thought about that, but I have this professor that I found only because she was one of my wife's best friends, and has remained that best friend. And she came to visit me, and I was always intrigued by finding out about baby faces. So I trapped her into doing this podcast today. So bear with me, okay, folks, and welcome to the podcast. Okay. Dr. Leslie Zebrowitz is a powerhouse in social perception. Her research on baby faceness and the overgeneration hypothesis is perfect for seniors because it explains why people treat us differently based on our facial structure and how those rule changes or don't as we age. So I'm going to start out with a couple of quick quotes, and then I'm going to introduce the doctor and let her tell us about what she does, and then we're going to go on with the podcast. Okay. A smile of a child is the best thing that can happen to anyone. It has the power to make us forget all of our worries. And then another one is, babies are such a nice way to start people. I think that's one's really true. And Don Harold is the person who spoke about that. Okay. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hello, Ken.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Go ahead.
All right. So I went to college at the University of Wisconsin, where I met Peggy, Ken's wife. And then I went to graduate school at Yale. And then I took my first and only job at Brandeis University, from which I'm now emerita. I retired 6 years ago. And my early research had nothing to do with baby faces or studying faces. That was really not a very popular thing to study in my field. Maybe only very recently, maybe in the last 10, 15 years has it caught on.
How did you come up with the idea of studying baby faces?
Well, that particular thing was inspired by something I read when I was on my first sabbatical leave. I read a paper that talked about how the head is remodeled with maturation, and it's really kind of interesting to look at the skull of a baby and the skull of an adult, and they're very different in ways that, well, I'll just mention. So babies have smaller chins and higher foreheads. Mostly what grows from infancy to adulthood is the jaw part of your face.
Okay.
Babies obviously have smaller noses. Their eyes are bigger relative to their face. Eyes don't grow that much, and they don't have big noses. So,
You insulting your friend's husband?
oh, no, I
Okay.
don't perceive you as having a big nose. But anyway,
Okay.
so what this research showed is that you can show facial profiles that have been computer simulated to model what the changes that happen with growth, and you can ask people which is older, and you can change it just enough to be barely discernible that the change is made, but people are reliably saying which is older. So I
Okay.
thought, well, that's really interesting. People can recognize very subtle differences in the facial configurations of babies and children and teenagers and adults. And I wonder what else could go along with that. Would that influence people's perceptions? And would it influence people's impressions of faces, regardless of age, that are more baby like in appearance?
Okay.
So that was the immediate stimulation for my research.
All right. Now, here's my question. Are you better off having a baby face in this world let's say in the United States, than not having a baby face?
It depends, and I can tell you about research that shows that it depends.
Okay. Why do we
Okay.
form first impressions from about faces?
All right, yeah, let me just speak more generally.
Sure.
We do form first impressions, and we do it really fast. I mean, some research has shown pictures of faces for less than a second, and people have a first impression that actually agrees with the impression formed by people who have more time to look at the face. So they do it very fast. We do it even though I think most of us have been told we shouldn't do it. Don't judge a book by its cover. And for a long time, people sort of dismiss this as, well, people do this because of the media. They, the bad guys look different from the good guys, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that really begs the question. So where did the media get this idea from? And so I came up with these overgeneralization hypotheses, one of which I call babyface overgeneralization. I mean, the general idea is that it's adaptive to recognize quickly certain qualities from faces. So you want to be able to quickly recognize a baby versus an adult so that you treat the baby appropriately and that preserves the species. You also want to quickly identify an angry expression versus a happy expression that can protect you from harm. You want to quickly identify someone who's sick that can protect you from bad health. And so, in the case of overgeneralization, I argued that this tendency is so strong that we overgeneralize and we perceive some of the qualities that babies really have in other people who aren't babies, but whose faces resemble babies.
So,
So,
does that mean that you have an advantage by having a baby face?
well, baby face people are perceived to have childlike traits. So they're perceived to be warm, submissive, naive. Those are the strongest things. And so is that good or bad? Well, it depends on the context. I mean, I've done research that shows that if you look at people in small claims court who are accused of an intentional wrongdoing, then the more baby-faced you are, the defendants are,
Okay.
the less likely the judge is to find them at fault. And
Interesting.
it was a huge difference between the people who got the most baby-faced ratings and the people who got the most mature face ratings. The mature face, like, I don't know, I think 85% were found at fault, and the baby-faced, maybe 40% were found at fault. So it was a meaningful difference.
Yeah, that's
And we
significant.
also, I mean, we controlled things like, well, how much evidence did the person present to support that person's innocence, et cetera.
Right.
So in that case, it was good. But when it was an accidental offense that the person was accused of, then things kind of went the other way. It wasn't as strong, but the more baby faced you were, the more likely the judge was to find you at fault. So
Really?
it looks like there's kind of an assimilation effect.
Huh.
So if you look like someone who would have done this, then you're found at fault. If you look like someone who wouldn't have done it, then you're not found at fault. There's an interesting twist, though. If a person admits guilt, then there's a contrast effect. A baby-faced person who is known to have intentionally done something wrong is punished more harshly,
Interesting.
and a mature-faced person who is known to have done something accidentally wrong is punished more harshly.
Okay. Well, as you know, my audience is made up primarily of older adults.
Mhm.
Some of them have baby faces, some of them, like myself, do not. Um, are we treated differently in a line at a grocery store? Like, do people smile more? Like, does the cashier smile more at uh, baby face people? Or are they treated better? Or is it more? I'm hoping that it's more in personality, not necessarily the looks, because it's not the speech we're talking about here. Because they may not have, because they make a very quick decision. People make a quick decision on somebody when they first see them before anyone says anything. Is that correct?
Right, that's what I meant by first impressions happen within seconds,
Right.
within 1 second. Yes.
Okay. So if you've got an actor who people wouldn't recognize as an actor and they showed up in a cashier's line and I showed up in the cashier's line looking the way I do, what would be the impression of the two of us by most people?
Alright, well, I can tell you that impressions of baby-faced people that I've mentioned, that they are more submissive, naive, warm, and physically weak is another one.
Hmm.
Those hold true for babies, they hold true for children. These are the faces. They hold true for adolescents, they hold true for young adults, and they hold true for older adults. So this overgeneralization effect occurs regardless of the age of the person. Some babies are more baby-faced than others, and some older adults are more baby-faced than others, and so
Right.
you get the same first impressions.
I had read someplace in doing my research that actors, I'm going to say actors, meaning both male and female, because that's what you're supposed to say now, that actors that have baby faces have roles given to them, more roles as they're older. Did you find that to be true? Did you investigate that?
There's one study that I can tell you about. Let me see if I remember the details because I haven't read it lately. It's not a study that I did that
Okay.
looked at the prevalence of baby-faced and mature-faced actors, okay?
Okay.
And, what they found I'll come back to your first question, though, about age, but what they found, this didn't vary age, but when economic times were bad, there were more mature-faced actors, and when economic times were good,
Hmm.
there were more baby-faced actors, and it's as if people wanted the reassurance of a grown-up in charge when economic times were bad. That was the explanation. So, I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And so what that means basically is the director or the producer during the time, maybe unconsciously, is picking an actor, again, it could be a male or female, based on what the movie is about, but also based on what the world is like at that moment, correct?
Right, right, and also based on what the audience will perceive in that actor's face, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess so.
And that's I mean, I think they call that typecasting. So some actors complain that they can never get a role, a certain kind of role because they don't look the part.
Right, right. Well, I think that's true. It's been true for a long time. Interesting. Okay. Does our ability to read other people's faces decline as we get older?
Well, first I should put a caveat in and I won't call it reading other people's faces, let's call it having first impressions from
Okay.
faces because, reading suggests that you're correct, and we can get to that later, but the baby face overgeneralization effect is not only shown for faces of all ages, it's also shown by people of all ages, okay? So older adults in their 60s show the same effect of facial babyishness on their first impressions as younger adults do.
Really? Hmm.
Yes. And I mean, you might have hoped that older adults would get wiser and follow the rule, don't judge a book by its cover better. But this is an automatic response. And so it's really not something that's filtered, you know?
So you let down your guard a little bit when you see a baby, and you let down your guard a little bit when you see a baby-faced adult. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Yes.
Huh.
You're more
Okay.
likely to trust that think they're more trustworthy. Yes, and less hostile, as
Right.
well as, physically weaker, maybe they're less threatening, and more naive, etcetera. Yes.
But my next question about that is, does that mean that first impressions of baby-faced people are accurate?
No,
Yes or
they're
no?
not.
They're not.
Not
Okay.
necessarily, and I'll
Right.
I'll tell you more, but first let me just mention that it's not only older adults who do this, but even children. So preschoolers, if you tell preschoolers you're gonna ask them you show them two men, pictures of two men,
Okay.
and you ask them, Which of these people would share toys? Which of these people is friendly and would read stories to children?
Mm,
Which of these people would say when they're playing a game, I'm going to go first? Which would say, I'm going to make up the rules. Okay.
okay.
And they pick the baby face person for the warmer, kinder behaviors, and they pick the mature face person for the more dominant behaviors. So even preschoolers kind of
Wow.
implicitly respond to baby faceness.
So it's just within the human background from the millions of years or the hundreds of thousands of years, whatever it turns into, that it's just in our genes, really.
Well, I mean, more evidence for that is a study I did that showed babies. Obviously, you can't ask babies
Right.
questions, but we showed them pictures of two adults.
Hmm.
One was baby faced, one was mature faced. They were equally attractive. This is according to adults' ratings, right?
Okay.
And we assessed how long we put these two pictures up in front on computer screens,
Hmm.
and babies looked longer at the baby face person.
Really. And you
Yeah.
got paid for these studies, right?
You never get paid for studies. You pay to have them
Oh,
published.
okay. Shows you what
Even
I
if
know.
they're peer reviewed, and you have to pay for reprints. You don't have to pay for publication, but you have to pay for reprints.
Well, I just think it's an interesting subject that you have specialized in all these years. And I just wonder why I didn't think of something like that.
You had a different day job than I did, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I had a lot of day jobs. Oh, what other first impressions from faces show accuracy? Is there anything out there you want to give us
Well,
to guide us when we're standing in line and determining whether we should talk to somebody or not talk to them?
okay. So people, first of all, let me just say that impressions of baby face people are not necessarily accurate. And in fact, studies I've looked at have found that boys and men show behavior that seems to contradict the baby face stereotype.
Explain it for a common fool
Yeah,
like
all right. So
myself. Okay,
I'll just say it more concretely.
okay,
More baby-faced adolescent boys
okay.
are more likely to have personality traits of aggressiveness. Okay. These are
Really?
middle class boys. More baby-faced boys in a high risk population for delinquency, the more baby-faced are actually more likely to be delinquent. Okay.
Wow, that's
So
interesting.
so that's opposite to prediction. In middle class samples, more baby faced boys have higher academic achievement. Okay.
Hmm,
Which is opposite to predicting that they're kind of naive and low in cognitive abilities.
okay. Speaking about that, does our ability to read other people's faces decline as we get older?
Let me come back to that and just finish that
Okay,
the accuracy thing for a minute, because
okay.
I think it's important to say, well, how could this be accurate? How could this come to pass that more baby faced boys are what we expect or different from what we expect? And one explanation has to do with what psychologists call self fulfilling prophecy effects. If you treat people in certain ways, then over the course of time, they'll come to behave in the ways that you're expecting them to behave. That's self fulfilling prophecy. But another possibility is a self defeating prophecy. If you treat people in certain ways, then in the course of time, they will rebel against that and become the opposite of what you're expecting. And
Hmm,
so I think for boys and maybe men, being baby faced and being treated like you're sweet and kind is not congruent with the male
image.
um, stereotype or
Right.
male expectations. So you
Mhm.
have to fight hard to counteract it. For girls and women, we found no evidence of this behavior opposite to expectations. And in fact, in one study, we found that women who had been baby faced across their life from adolescence to like mid 50s,
Mhm.
their personalities were more congruent with the baby face stereotype than women who hadn't been baby faced for that time. So there are other things that have been studied are impressions of health and intelligence.
Okay.
And first of all, there are no differences in the impressions of older and younger adults of faces.
Hmm.
when judging their health and intelligence. And both older and younger adults are accurate when judging
Hmm.
health and intelligence. Health is judged more accurately for older faces than younger faces, and measures of intelligence are judged more accurately for younger faces than for older faces.
Okay. Is there a same age bias, for example,
Yes,
for seniors?
yes. So older people are particularly more accurate. Well, not in these measures, but in the I'm trying to remember where it was. There's some measures where people are better when the faces are closer to their own age.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily that older people are better than younger, just everyone's better when they're making judgments about faces maybe that they're more familiar with.
Okay. Is there
You
a
want me to
Go
tell
ahead.
you how people judge health and cognitive abilities accurately? The cues
Sure.
they use? It's not baby faceness that they use attractiveness.
Describe the difference between baby face and attractiveness.
Okay. So baby faces, as I said before, are kind of round faces, big eyes, small noses, etc. Attractive faces are more symmetrical. Oddly enough, they're more average. They don't deviate from the population average in any notable way. And they often are more typical for their sex.
Okay.
Um, so that makes faces more attractive. There are other things, but those are the main things that have been studied. And so people use attractiveness when they're judging health, and they use it when they're judging intelligence. And it actually predicts health and intelligence,
Hmm.
but that depends on the age of the face. So it doesn't predict intelligence for older faces. It predicts health, but not intelligence for older faces. But people think it does, so they use it. Okay.
And you mentioned the halo effect before, correct?
That's the attractiveness. Yes.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, so people think attractive people have every good trait you could imagine.
Really?
Just
Yeah.
about, yes. Maybe not moral behavior, kind of, is the one possible exception, but health, intelligence, sociability, dominance.
Okay. You talked about some other things, I think, in some of your research. Your research mentions that baby-faced people are often seen as more warm but less competent. Does that stereotype get worse for women as they transition into the grandmother years?
It doesn't, because it's the same for older as well as younger.
Okay. As our skin loses elasticity, we tend to look downcast. Are younger people literally misinterpreting our anatomy as an attitude problem?
Well, this relates to emotion overgeneralization, I think, in a way, um,
Yeah.
to the extent that as you age, you look more dour.
Hmm.
So there's another tendency in which people form impressions of people's traits based on the emotions that their neutral facial expression resembles. Okay.
Okay.
So people, maybe when you get older, you have more vertical creases in your forehead. That looks like an angry expression, right?
Hmm.
And so maybe older people would look angrier than younger people, and then they would be judged to be more hostile or less warm.
Right. It's also the way you approach people. So it's your whole physique and what they're looking at. If you're bent over, if you have
Yes,
got a cane or in a wheelchair,
yes,
those
yes,
things all affect how people
yes.
interact with you, correct?
That's a good point, and I've done research looking at differences in the gait, how people walk, older and
Hmm.
younger people. And younger people, especially kids, 'cause I had kids in the study, they pick up their feet more and they have longer stride lengths, etc.
Hmm.
And this creates certain impressions regardless of the walker's age. So you can look at people who are all the same age, but some of them walk more like older adults, and they elicit impressions that are more like stereotypes of older adults.
Interesting. Okay. Got one more, the wisdom factor. Is there any evidence that being old makes us better judges of character? Or are we just easily fooled by a pretty face as at 70 as we were with a pretty face at 17?
When it comes to first impressions, I've found no difference between older people and younger people.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that with more prolonged interaction, maybe older people would be wiser.
Okay. Any other words of wisdom you have for older people about how they should approach other people and suggestions of how they should control or can look at other people and kind of step back a second and say, well, just because I think that they're like this doesn't mean they're like this. What would you suggest?
Well, when I've done this research before, like I've talked to judges trying to warn them about this problem based on the results of my small claims court study, it's not something that you can stop from doing, but it's something that you can remind yourself you might be doing if you know about it, and perhaps that will help. You're still going to have the first impression,
Right.
but if you realize that you're having it, then maybe you can suspend judgment a little bit and find out the truth about that person.
Okay. It's interesting what you said because you said that you've spoken to judges and so on about this. And I never even thought about that because they obviously are making a decision about someone's life, one way or the other.
Right,
Usually, it almost
right,
everything is that you go to court for affects your life, and you're in front of someone who doesn't really know you.
right.
They're going to hear what one side says about you and what another side says about you, but that impression that they have of you has a great impact.
Exactly.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is I wrote a brief article once for some law journal, and I suggested that maybe justice needs to be blind, and we need to prevent the judge and the jury from seeing the defendant,
It's
okay?
interesting.
But
Interesting.
that goes against norms. I don't know if it's rules, but norms that lead judges and juries to think that you can assess a person's truth from their
Hmm.
demeanor.
Interesting.
People have studied that. Are we good lie detectors? People are terrible lie detectors, actually.
Hmm. Well, we are what we're born with. We either have a baby face or we don't. I mean, I guess you could do plastic surgery, but it would be kind of hard to start somebody with like my face and into a baby face because I don't have any of those
Well,
features.
people have nose jobs. Women
Yes.
wear eye makeup to make their
Hmm.
eyes look bigger. They wear lipstick to make their lips look poutier, or lately, women have, I don't know, not lately, it's been for quite a while, they put something in their lips to make their lips look bigger. Those
Botox.
okay. So that's all making yourself look more baby-faced, actually.
Interesting. Interesting. So what you're saying is people want to have baby faces.
Women, not
Women in
men.
particular want to have baby
Yeah,
faces. Okay,
yeah.
great. Okay. Any last words for me other than Ken, shut up?
No, this has been much more fun than I was worrying it would be.
I know you were a little nervous and I said, "Don't worry about it. You know me. I've spent hours and hours with you. You so you should know that I'm a little wacko and these are the kind of things that I do." Well, thank you for being with us. I just have two little sayings for the outro for this podcast. First, I want to thank you for taking your time and letting me make you squirm in your seat a little bit. But I thought it was good for us to have that interaction. So thanks again, Leslie. It was a pleasure having you. So here's my quotes for today that end the podcast. One of them is, I still have a baby face and I'm 25. It's a blessing and a curse. Thought that was interesting.
Yes.
And then another one is, a baby face is like a mask of innocence that stays with you even when you've seen the world. That was an anonymous person.
Hmm.
So I thought the first one was a little bit better.
I
But
and
anyway,
the first one is, yeah, I liked it. It's
okay.
true.
I'll say it one more time for everybody, and then hopefully you'll smile at the next person you see and say, it's okay if they don't have a baby face. I can still speak to them. I still have a baby face and I'm 25. It's a blessing and a curse. I'm sure that's true. And with that, I'll say goodbye until next week. Thank you for being here with us on We Are Old, Get Over It. Just a quick postscript that the professor forgot to mention that she had a book on Amazon, which is also available in many libraries. It's called Reading Faces, Window to the Soul. And that can be purchased on Amazon, or maybe you can get it at your local library. And that concludes this episode of We Are Old, Get Over It. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found our conversation both insightful and entertaining. Remember, age is a journey, not a destination. So embrace the wrinkles, the forgetfulness, and the occasional tech frustrations with a good dose of get over it attitude. Until next time, keep laughing, keep learning, and keep getting over it. Ken out.
This podcast features a variety of perspectives. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are solely their own and do not constitute an endorsement by this program. Unless otherwise stated, this podcast does not endorse the products and services of our guests, but shares them for informational purposes only.